Welcome to the Breakneck Podcast with myself, Ian Sweeney, and Matt Pashensky. I'm going to kick it straight to Matt. Matt, what are we going to talk about this week?
We've had a lot of episodes lately where we've gotten deep into Claude Code and Claude Cowork and using agents. You know, you've recently given your agent, your Claude bot, your credit card and have been purchasing things online and kind of getting to the bleeding edge of what is possible with these agents. And similarly, you know, I've been building a lot of software with agents, doing a lot of just internal operations with agents. And I think, you know, we were kind of like chatting right before the episode. I saw a tweet this week, which is like the only way to stay on top of AI is to be unemployed. It's just there's so much happening so quickly. And it feels like you're in this tremendous race to kind of figure out what's about to happen. And it feels like everybody knows about it. And you feel like totally behind. You feel like the world's running away from you. If you're listening to podcasts, it feels like everybody else is ahead of you and you're falling behind and the world's changing so quickly. But I want to use this episode as maybe like you know, like when you take like a drink of water, when you're doing wine tasting, they give you that little drink in between.
Palate cleanser sort of, or a reset. Yeah.
I want to do a little bit of palate cleanser, a little reality check, and talk about interacting with people who are normies. And when I say normies, you know, normal people, just dealing with day-to-day life. But you meet people who have not spent the last 6 weeks every single day playing with their Claude bot. And you're not surrounded by that. And just reality check, what are those people feeling right now? And what is it like when you show them something that you've actually done lately? Which this hopefully what this podcast is. Showing people who haven't seen it what's possible. So I got a couple examples from my life in the last few weeks.
And go for it.
Yours. Let's go through a few. So yesterday was a fun one for me. So I have a friend. He's been trying to get into AI. And so I was like, oh, you're doing these, you know, these AI classes and things like that. And he's like, oh, yeah. And I'm kind of digging in. What are you trying to do? And he explained it to me. And so I was like, I got to try to like one up him. Yeah, you've been playing with it for a while. I wanted to like shock him, right? And so I just hit my little function button, got my Claude Code running, and I just described what he had just described, like his big goal of the last couple months that he had been really investing in AI. And then I had it wrapped up as an HTML page, or actually I did it as a video. And he was shocked. He's like, how'd you do that? I was like, oh, you must not know. So I went over to his house and I loaded up Claude Code, got him on the Pro plan, opened his terminal. Actually, I had him use I couldn't get his terminal working. He has a very messed up computer. And we just had him sit down and type what he wanted. And he had been learning about Lovable and Leonardo and all these different programs and all this stuff. I'm like, no. You're taking a class that was designed 3 months ago. Yeah. This is the alpha right now. This is where the market has moved. And he was absolutely shocked. And this is someone who has been taking a class a couple nights a week for the last month and just getting them on the Claude Code Pro plan, not the Max plan, but just getting them up to speed. And I thought that he would be a little further ahead. I suspected he wouldn't. But the fact that this is a person who has actively been engaging and spending many hours a week learning about AI, and I was able to go in 20 minutes and be like, this is the future, right? Like, and Anthropic had, I was kind of mad at Anthropic. Like, you had this Super Bowl commercial, which, by the way, many people from foreign countries were watching. Many of the ones who like Bad Bunny were watching. And I'm guaranteeing you there are many people like the person I just spoken with who watched the Super Bowl. And instead of talking about, you can click a button and build anything you want in the entire world in 2 minutes, they went on and on about how ChatGPT sucked for putting in ads. And it's like, I want to go and like just walk through. Like, you all need to give me $20. I want to go buy you the Pro plan right now. I'm going to show you in 2 or 3 minutes what's possible. And it just reinforced for me that things are going to change enormously from where we are now. Like, the technology has changed, but people who are engaged with it, with AI, are still light years behind. And I'm going to pull up that graph and we can put it on the screen. All right. on the screen, you got each dot is 3.2 million people. There are 2,500 dots on the screen, and that represents all the people on Earth. And I think a good 30% of people could use Claude Code as is to develop a website that could be live today. Essentially, anyone who's literate and can functionally use a computer at this point could make a website that's live. Now, I don't think there's a huge market for developing just websites, but that's a big part of the internet, right? You have a URL, a web page, you want to put some information and maybe some buttons and some data collection. You can just hit the function button if you had it set up, walk into the thing, and then it will open up that web page finished on your laptop in about 2 minutes. And Claude Code is so good at it, and it's so easy that it's almost like, again, literacy or whatever. So the number of these squares that should be using or could be using this type of technology to coordinate people, build new businesses, and there's so many businesses that didn't make sense when it cost $1 million to build an app, where you can build an app for literally $20, the equivalent, right? And when you go through, are they a free chatbot user? Have they ever logged into ChatGPT even once? That's just these green ones. Pays $20 a month for AI. That's, I think, what we're talking about now. That's my friend this weekend. I finally got him to pay $20 a month.
Yeah, is that I get asked the question all the time. I need to get up to speed. How do I do that? And one of the pieces of guidance is just get a pro plan or get a $20 a month paid plan at a minimum. The other one I give is, and I actually lied in a conference last week when I think about it. I said, look, you need to, create your own culture of learning, meaning find the time and the way that you want to learn. And for us, this is part of it. And I lied in the sense of, I said, yeah, I probably spend 10 hours a week learning, investing and learning. And that's not true. I probably spend 40 hours a week, honestly. But so get your pro plan, find the time and a fun way, something that's engaging for you. What other guidance would you give people to get from, the light green to the dark green into the yellow dots?
Well, and it's like, I kind of want to go like shake Anthropic. It's like, number one, it totally reoriented me because we talked about, I listened to the Claude Code episode, Claude Cowork episode that we did, which I thought was great. I shared it with some friends, and then they came to me like, "Oh, Matt, they read this thing," and it's like, "Oh, this is changing." I'm like, "This is exactly what I talked about a month and a half ago. Get up to speed. Get on Breakneck Podcast." So I sent them the podcast episode. But one thing that you were talking about is there's so many people who have these semi-complex applications that you could never purchase off the shelf that suddenly are possible, and I'm just looking at like, I want to go into Anthropic and be like, okay, number one, this should all be self-contained. And they've done a good job. They've added Cowork to the Claude package, but then they don't give you any sense that you could develop these applications. You kind of just have to left to discover it. And it's like, this guy's computer was so messed up that I couldn't, in terms of his like permissions and stuff, he's not a tech guy. Like I like to have my hotkeys all configured and all that stuff. And he couldn't use the Whisper application. So the last thing I left him is like, hey, give this guy instructions on how to fix his laptop. Here's what's wrong. I click send. I'm like, that's your homework. Bye. And but it's like, to get that first engagement, I was so confident that I just did it. And he had all the capabilities to do it really. But he expects things to be hard. So he wants to go a little bit at a time. And when you do a little bit at a time, you're not really taking advantage of the latest AI. It's just,
and that's something that we've had to learn about and kind of readjust to. We often come from this stuff from the kind of product perspective, very iterative, step by step. Don't do too much because that costs money and time and effort. And now we're having to be, oh my God, I need to I need to look over the horizon. I need to look at Horizon 3, not just kind of over today's horizon. So there's a lot of adjustment there. But I want to go back to something you said there and frame it a little bit. So my third piece of guidance for people is, I think there are essentially three types of AI, right? There's personal AI, stuff that I'm doing for me. There's employee AI, stuff I do in my job to help me do my job. And then there's organizational AI. Like this is stuff where you want to deliver something bigger, some sort of business type of an outcome. And when you're talking about helping your buddy build something, it's a great on-ramp for people to AI right now to do that. But I don't think there's longevity in that for most people. But I think what that does do, if you as somebody who always thought, it'd be cool to have a website, can now suddenly build a website. You're like, well, if I can build a website, then I can do all these other things over here for myself. Like maybe I build a little, family calendar, bill paying type of an app type of a thing. And then I'm like, well, I'm in work. So now I can definitely do some really powerful stuff in work because I was able to build a website. So now I can, I don't know, build this thing that I need for my job, which will be kind of an ongoing thing that I'll need for a long period of time. So
yeah, I think that the major shift people need to do now is, like you said, you show up to AI. You have this for the first time. You have Claude Cowork or Claude Code in front of you. You have all these things you could do, and you kind of come up with an idea. And you run out of ideas pretty quick, or the ideas you have, you eventually get to the point where you realize, like, actually, this is gonna be quite a bit of work. And this is, I think, what the next few months are gonna be like. Everyone's gonna go do all the low hanging fruit, and there will be a huge burst in productivity. But we're very quickly gonna get to things that start to get complex again, because the world is built to make the things that we do now just easy enough that people can do them, right? And then we're gonna do all those. But then we're going to be able to do more complex stuff. But the world isn't built to do complex stuff. Like, we pay bills. We have like a very small number of companies that charge us money each month, and we pay those bills, right? Well, in the future, when an agent's paying your bills, you could have 10,000 companies, but that'll break a lot of things because
yeah.
How would you even know who you're working with? How do you trust the AI? Like, that's a new problem, and there's no training data set for that new, much more complex world that we're going to go live in a few months. And so that everyone will get to work there, and we're going to have to go sort things out because we care about our money. We own, we want to make sure we don't spend too much. We have like a better sense of what works and what doesn't work. And then the AI will catch up to that, and we'll go from there. But I think there's going to be this low hanging fruit catch up. And then I am already re-architecting my company to take into account the fact that we shouldn't think of things as discrete projects that we start and finish. We actually need to reorient how we work so that the agent can actually figure those things out and take action on themselves. So go from I have to be creative and sit down and have an idea of what I want the AI to do to reorienting so the AI becomes my boss in a lot of sense. That was a theme we used a couple of weeks ago. That the AI is telling me, hey, Matt, you should probably be doing this with this customer. Hey, this has been a piece of feedback for the product. Can we work on this now? And so moving to that mode where I am putting all of the data into a format that's secure but available to the AI, and also giving the AI a sense of what things I need done and a way to test if it's done, and then a way for the AI to get in contact with me. And that's the Claudebot revolution that I think you're obsessed with right now, is that move from mostly I go to the AI to do stuff, which is where I was yesterday with my friend, and to one where the AI is primarily driving a lot of the activity after I tell it what I want in general.
Yeah. This maybe 18 months ago, when I was really kind of getting started on my AI journey, I kept describing it as everything is quicksand, right? I'd be like, okay, so you tell me this, blah, blah, blah. And then, okay, but this is like the way we used to do it, right? And like, yeah, okay. But then next month, it kind of, it changed. And you're like, no, the AI can do that thing. Start even earlier. So just hearing you describe this, I think I've gotten used to this kind of quicksand notion where you're like, well, I'm sinking here. Why am I even doing this? The AI can do this. So I'm doing exactly what you're doing, where I'm like, okay, this isn't possible right now, but in 6 weeks, somebody will have worked this out. So I need to be 2 iterations ahead of this in terms of my thinking. So if I have to do this manually for 6 weeks, fine. Somebody's going to come out on a random Tuesday with the solution to this, and then I'll plug that in, and then I'll keep working my way.
Yeah. They have to talk about Red Queen race, where in order just to stay where you are, you have to run at full speed. It's from the from Alice in Wonderland, right? Like it's you have to go as fast as you can just not to fall behind.
Yeah.
And I think if you're not taking into advantage of AI to drive a lot of your activity, then it's very tiring. It's very scary. And I think there needs to be this switch that people are flipping so that the AI is doing most of that running for you. And we were mentioning a tweet, which is like the only way to stay up to date with AI is to be unemployed. Excuse me. And I felt that way in December. I was like, I'm working too hard to use AI well enough to do this for me. Excuse me. Let me start over. We were talking about a tweet that the only way to keep up to date with AI is to be unemployed. And I felt in December that I was falling behind and I had too much work and I didn't have time to use AI. And then I watched my friend Massimo do the same things that I was struggling to do so fast that I finally just dropped it. And I said, no, I'm starting over. And then I did the whole thing just from AI. Talked about it on our Claude Cowork episode. And then it has produced a shift in me that suddenly those activities happen very naturally now. Whereas in the past, they were just like week-long projects that I had to worry about coming up. And making that shift, I think, is the most important thing that people need to do once you get past the first entry point of, do you even know what is possible, is to move to a mode where you have set up the flows in your life so that AI is primarily being the driving force to keep you up to date versus you having to apply effort. I mean, maybe that's the best way to.
Yeah. So let's talk about people who are much further away from this than we are. They're the kind of light green dots that, that make the most of that chart. So I'll give you just two quick examples. A buddy of mine works for Anthropic, and he has since moved, but he was living in, I think it was Charleston. And he said, and I was saying this stuff is crazy. And he said, yeah, like on a Saturday morning, I'm out with the kids and we're out with the normal people. He's like, I can't talk about work because people would literally think I was insane if I told them the stuff that is, that is happening. And I was listening to a piece from a morning show in Ireland. And they had the head of a computer science department from one of the universities on at like 8:30 on a Monday morning, talking about, I think it was one of the claims that white collar work will be, will disappear in 18 months. Granted, this is media and you want to, an engaging piece on the TV. He says, oh, this is such a joke. That's never going to happen. Basically said, this is complete bullshit. And the commentator's like, oh yeah, I've heard these other people saying this stuff like AI is okay, but it's not that great, And they had this powwow for 5 minutes. And then at one point somebody said, yeah, but sometimes it's good. But basically the message was, whatever's happening in Silicon Valley and this technology world, they are full of shit and they're just trying to sell software or something. This is never, ever, ever, ever going to happen. Yes, it's not going to happen in 18 months. But you're in a bad spot if you're that skeptical.
What you find is that a lot of these very smart people who are commenting are talking about, like the AI safety papers that are coming out. They're like, oh, AI, made this mistake. And then you go look and it's a paper coming out like this month. And it's like, we trained this on GPT-4. And you're like, yeah, of course, GPT-4 sucked. We're like so far beyond that. There's GPT-5 already. Come on, get on the. And so I think a lot of the people who are expert in society don't just stay current, and they don't have their own little, and you see this with a lot of people who do talk intelligently about this and who are really grounded in what the capabilities are. They have their little set of tests. Ethan Mollick is a professor at NYU, I believe. Fantastic about this. Every time a new AI comes out, he has his little tests. One of them is he's been for years, anytime a new model comes out, a visual model, he says, show me an otter using Wi-Fi on an airplane. And it's so fun. And he shows you kind of, and I've been watching this for years, and it's like, he just shows you, and it used to be like, you could kind of understand it as an otter. And now it's like, it's a video. The otter is like, flirting with the flight attendant and is, it's just like, it's so powerful. And it's like, I think that's much more what I want to see from somebody to talk publicly about it. And what you realize is a lot of these people haven't even used it to the degree that I talked about with my friend yesterday. They haven't done that. It's like, you guys, you have to use it. If you think this isn't powerful, have you ever tried to build a website? Because I've done things that you wouldn't believe. I replicated a physics paper I wrote in 2008 in the back of an Uber when I was 15 minutes away from my house, coming back from the airport at 11 p.m. And I was able to also validate my result, reproduce it, and then I had this one idea. And in 15 minutes, I was able to not only reproduce my paper, but then also show that, oh, wait, you can't do that. Like I had this big idea I was going to do for like a second version of the paper, but I graduated and went into Silicon Valley and never finished it. And then I for years thought like, oh man, if I just had like a little bit of time, I could come back and do this. And it did it for me so fast that by the time I got home, I was like, oh, actually that wouldn't work. Okay, I see why it wouldn't work. Ooh, that would have been a waste of time. Like I'd wanted to go back and do a postdoc just to finish this one part of the paper. Like very, very little bit of desire to do that, but it was enough. AI can do incredible things for you. And when you hear people talking, you realize they're not engaged at that level with it.
Yeah, and that's the key. My brother is in finance, and he was here last week, and I was actually running him through some stuff that that we're doing at the moment. And he was like, "Oh, whatever, yeah, that's fine," because he's not in that space. He doesn't understand what we're doing. He's not. That didn't click with him. Didn't resonate. So I struggled to find ways to get people, like I'm worried, whatever job you're in, if you're a white collar worker and you spend any time on a keyboard, you need to be getting up to speed in AI. So this notion of creating an app or a website, interesting, but there's a shitload of people around the world that literally do not care about that. So I'm interested in what is the next biggest thing, the next biggest hook to pull people in.
Yeah.
Don't know what that is. But other than it's whatever you're interested in, because
I think that's such a good topic. We've been doing for app development the last few weeks. We tell people like we could build it in 2 weeks, like just to get them onboarded. Because like I need to like really figure out what is going to grab people and pull them into this new world. Because Pact, we build agentic project management, agentic management in general. But you don't really, really, really need it until you start using the agents to do all your work. And then you absolutely need it. So I'm like, okay, all I got to do now is get people to flip that switch that we're talking about and actually realize that most of their work could be done by agents. But once they're doing that, they have a whole new problem, which is how do I keep track of all this stuff that's happening? Yeah. And you've been talking about, it's like, you got to build systems on top of systems on top of systems. And that's, I think, where the opportunity is for us right now. And so I'm trying to figure out how do I get people to just realize that like, no, you might have been listening to this post on Facebook you're talking about and think, oh, this isn't going to affect me for a long time. No. You could already be completely crushing your peers, whether within a company, within departments, or companies that already exist that are external. You could have replicated everything they do in a week. And when we've rolled this out within 2 days, I mean, it could have been within the first day, the second time we meet with them, just to show them like the initial results, they're so shocked about what's possible. You can just see it. It's visceral and it's incredible. And we talked about this for a long time, the whole last year. What's going to get that visceral response from a customer? And like, it's like, we're just scratching the surface. We're just like the first thing we thought of. We go to show them, and we've been so in the weeds. Then once you pull yourself up and you show people what's possible, but again, in their language, and it's going to be different from finance and marketing. I have a marketing friend, and I showed him Notebook LM in December.
Yeah.
You've been part of these conversations, and blew him away. He's been doing marketing and developing sales collateral for years. Blew him away. So he calls me and he's like, "Yeah, I talked to this in this companies you would have heard." He said, "I just showed him that," and they were shocked. They thought I spent all weekend. I spent 20 minutes, and I was just chatting with Notebook LM and did it. And it's about finding those like you said, those moments where somebody sees something they'd never expected to happen, but connects with them not as like, oh, wow, that's cool. It's an otter that's using the Wi-Fi or some crazy deep fake of Donald Trump doing something funny. Instead, it's seeing your job in that moment of terror when you realize everything you've done for your whole life is going away. And then also that moment when you realize all this stuff you've always wanted to do and you kind of repressed in your mind and said, well, that's just not going to happen for me in my career. Even if you have 5 years left in your career, that might be enough to do every possible thing you've thought of, and you always just kind of put out of your head that wasn't possible. And so it's, I think, taking people through that in each of their own circumstances. And a lot of people are not going to be interested in that. They work because they want to get a paycheck, and then they want to go jet ski or whatever. Hopefully jet skis go down in cost because of AI. But for those of us who I think are engaged with the conquest that you get to experience by doing something interesting at work, I think everybody's going to have to go through that in the next year. And then those of us who can help people through that, there's a lot of business opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you live in any way in the digital world. By the way, if you live in the physical world, I think things are going to be a lot slower. And The world is a very, very complex place. I'm struck so often now as I walk through the world when I look at things that us as humans we can do. You know, a chunk of your job will disappear, but a bunch of it will remain. And maybe it's not in the same business, but anyway, all of that said, let's begin to wrap it up. Anything come across your desk? Happy to go first here.
Yeah, you go first. I have one too. I'm prepared this week.
One that was very interesting to me, and I'm really interested in your opinion. I think I know what you're going to say about this, but Jack Dorsey laying off, was it 40% of Block's employee base and blaming AI. So first of all, I think that's an excuse. There is no way that Block is 40% more efficient than it was based on just using AI. But I'm interested in your perspective on it.
I agree that there's no way to cut 40% of your company all at once. There's no shock that has taken place in the last 5 or 6 months that would justify that. It would have made sense to have rolling layoffs. But if you look at, like, Amazon has laid off 30,000 people, Facebook has laid off a bunch of people. I think there's several components. One, I don't want to write off that AI is going to make companies far more efficient in the sense that they can do the existing amount of work with far fewer people. But I think it is AI washing, which is to say that if you do a giant layoff, the market loves it because you now have more cash. More cash means that anybody's shorting your stock. And I'm sure there's a lot of people shorting anything Jack Dorsey does. I was a Twitter investor for a long time. People short Jack Dorsey company because they're inefficient, bloated. They waste money on insane stuff. He bought Tidal from Jay-Z just to boast to Jay-Z that he could.
Mm-hmm. Which is interesting because it was 40%. It drew a line in the sand to say, is it conceivable? And I think people like you and I and our listeners are well placed to kind of offer their opinion on this. Is it conceivable, in our opinion, that a business like Block is 40% more efficient or will be in the next 3 to 6 months due to AI? And my answer is no. You're talking about a business that really operates in a regulated environment. It is not conceivable or plausible that they are 40% more efficient. It is AI washing, in my personal opinion. Okay. Anything that came across your desk that you wanted to bring up?
My thing was Anthropic got into a huge beef with the Department of War, with Hegseth. Basically, they said, well, you can't use our product to do kill bots.
Yeah.
So you can't load up an Anthropic Claude into a autonomous vehicle that will independently decide to kill people, which makes a lot of sense. They won't be able to retain their employees if the employees think that they're building the fucking Terminator from the movie The Terminator, right? Like, you can't do that. Like, you can't have the safety company and then they build the Terminator. So I was like, that makes a lot of sense. And then they said that they can't do mass surveillance. So basically, there's a whole bunch of information we're collecting about people that we've always kind of tacitly said, like, it's not that big a deal. Well, now in AI, you could just look up all of Matt Bashensky's data from these people who are selling the data, or maybe the stuff the NSA is collecting, by accident or whatever. And now suddenly you could build a very good picture. I'm a saint. I don't do anything bad, so I have nothing to hide. But I think a lot of people don't feel that way. So they said they wouldn't do those two things. And instead of just saying something like, well, we're going to reduce our contract or end our contract, Pete Hegseth, because this is how they negotiate, this is the art of the deal, they said, if you don't do what we want, we are going to make it so that any company that does business with the Department of War will have to pull out all you will not be able, which is OFAC type shit. Like, you can't do business with Cuba, you can't do business with terror networks. And they were going to add Anthropic. It's like Cuba, terrorist networks, Anthropic, which, by the way, is much worse than we've done to any of the CCP controlled CCP controlled Chinese companies. We're not doing anything like that to DeepSeek.
Yeah.
It's just Anthropic, the most virtuous American company that's doing the best job. They're like, no, we're going to turn you into a terrorist organization. So that was interesting to see happen this week.
Well, the counter to those threats are Anthropic was the #1 app on the App Store over the weekend. It's down for various people today because they're having to deal with the increase in demand.
Killing productivity at a lot of companies.
Yeah. It was an interesting dance over the weekend. Well, another good episode, Matt. We'll land it there.
All right. Well, see you next time.
Okay. See ya.